So good afternoon. This webinar is being recorded. This is so we can provide a copy of this webinar to your employer. So this is so you can view it later on if you like, and also for all of your colleagues who are unable to make it today to view at a later date. We won't be using the webinar recording for any other purposes, and we delete our copy once it's been supplied to your employer. So let's get started today. Welcome along to Retirement and KiwiSaver. Now, this is something we don't think a lot of because we don't think about getting old much, but it's really good to give it a good review. So let's have a quick little look at what we're doing today. I won't worry about the raising your hand part of it because I know there are not very many of you who are actually able to interact on today's session. So if you do want to add a few things to the chat as we go through, please do feel free. It does help me so that I know what's happening and that you're all there. So first of all, tuia aranga, tuia araro, tuia aroto, tuia afahu, tuia kiti ara aharanga ora, kia whai hua, kia ora, humie, huie, takie. So welcome along today to the session. What we're going to be having a look at is retirement. So first of all, I'll tell you a little bit about Sorted. So we are an independent and impartial organisation, and what we do is we are part of the Te Ara Arahanga Ora Retirement Commission. Te Ara Arahanga Ora aims to empower people in Aotearoa on their journey to a better retirement and helping them to understand money. So this is one of the sessions that we do with regards to that. I can't give you any specific advice, but we can talk about things that you can do yourself and some great resources that you have the ability to access to help you with financial decisions. We do also encourage you to take notes, and there is a little workbook that goes along with this, so you might want to jot down some ideas and plans for things that you want to do after the session. So what's coming up today? What's coming up is we're going to have a look at thinking about retirement and milestones and how we're going to get there. We're going to have a look at your KiwiSaver and the nest egg you've got. We're going to think about how much you're actually going to need for retirement and what's your plan going to be. So first of all, what we'll do is we'll start with a little video about what's retirement. So hope you enjoy this.
Close your eyes. Visualize no longer having to work all day. You can do whatever you want. What are some of the things you'll be doing? And how does it feel? Write down 3 goals or activities you want to be, have, or do in your retirement. Over the next few activities, we will build towards understanding our current situation, understanding what we may need in retirement, and putting a plan in place to get there.
Okay, so here's a good opportunity to have a think about some of the things that you would like to do when you retire. So what do you want to be, have, and to do in retirement? You might like to jot down some ideas as to what this looks like for you. Now, because it's really hard to think of our future selves, you might want to consider, and this could be a little bit scary, I've done it, is to look at something like a face app. Now, this is the one that all the kids get in to make themselves look beautiful on their selfies, but it actually has a little button on there as well, and it'll actually ask, you can make yourself look older. Now, if you're like me, you'll probably get a bit of a fright. I end up looking like my grandmother, something I never anticipated being, but it also does help a lot when you're trying to think about and be motivated about what your future likes or what you wanted to do when you retire, simply because it's very hard to imagine ourselves as being old. And my mother does tell me that even though she's 78, she doesn't feel old. So it's a good idea, especially if you can access a tool like that. It might be a bit of fun to think of what you could do. Now, also, when thinking about the things that you want to do in retirement, it's also a very good motivator if you're having trouble keeping on track or wondering why you are trying to save for your retirement. Now, here's a little video from a retiree about retirement and her perspective.
My Tuesdays are yakking days. Just yak all day. And, yeah, Skype my sister every Tuesday afternoon in Dunedin, and my sister-in-law in London every Tuesday morning. We swap stories and that sort of thing, and when you're talking to her, you don't realise she's 13,000 miles away. I mean, years ago we could never visualise sort of having a phone that people can see you, and it's virtually what Skyping is. When you're 80, you don't know whether you've got 5 minutes or 5 years. So time is of the essence, really. We'd save to travel and then do that, come back, save a bit more. We went without a lot. If you couldn't pay for it, you didn't have it. That was, you know, the philosophy then. I don't think I'd be where I am now if we just willy-nilly bought things that we wanted. At 20 and 30, you don't really think about retiring because it's never going to happen to you. You know, you don't realise that one day you're going to wake up and you're going to be 80.
Okay, so as we can hear from Anne, it's like one day you wake up and all of a sudden you're 80. For us, of course, that is going to be a different experience because there's going to be a lot of technology change between now and the time that we hit 80. In the paper, you would have recently seen that things like EFTPOS cards may very well be a thing of the past well before we hit 80. So part of our challenge will be keeping up with new technology as well as keeping ourselves current and looking at the things that we want to do. So in your workbooks, you might want to jot down a few things that may be important to you. Now, it could be that you want to play more golf. It could be that you want to spend more time with your kids or your grandchildren when you're in your retirement. But you may want to add to that list somewhere, how are you going to keep up with technology? You can't always borrow somebody else's child, but it is always a very, very good way of figuring out how to set up your phone, I find anyway. So, future me thanks current me. As I said, very hard sometimes to be motivated to save for retirement, but once we get to retirement, you will absolutely be thanking yourself that you took the time to do some planning. Now, not to scare you too much, but here's a little calculation. How many paydays have you got till you retire? So if you take your age, or if you're not in planning to retire at 65, take the age you plan to retire at, subtract your age from it, and if you're paid fortnightly, multiply this by 26, or if you're paid monthly, it would be 12, or if you're paid weekly like me, that's 52. So if you were 40 and you paid fortnightly, you're looking at about 650 pays. Now, I've did an exercise with a group once, and one of our participants in that group had over 1,000 paydays to still go before she retired. She was the envy of the group, and she envied the person who had only 30 paydays to go before retirement. But when you ask the person who had only had the 30 paydays to go, they were sitting there going, I want to be that younger person again because I feel now like I'm so unprepared. So if you need a little bit of motivation, go and have a chat to somebody you know who is nearly at retirement or has retired. You might find that it helps with an incentive to actually look at your finances and set yourself up. When you've worked out how many paydays till you've got to retirement, how does this feel? Are you comfortable with it? Are you surprised? Are you not bothered? Some people might be concerned and others of you might be stressed. It's absolutely okay to have any of these feelings. It's quite natural. And as far as we know now, National Super is still going to be around for us when we retire. But what we want is we possibly want a retirement that's better than National Super. Anybody in this group, if you know somebody who only has National Super to cover their living costs, you might want to have a chat to them and ask what they would like to have done differently, perhaps. So how much is National Super? For a single person living alone, do you think it's A, $358 a week, B, $496 a week, C, $525, or D, $611? I know which one I would like it to be, but it's actually $496. So for people who are over 18 who start a new job, are these people automatically enrolled in to KiwiSaver? This is actually true, they are. Unfortunately, they can still opt out. I did have some friends who were quite clever about this. What they did was they signed their children up to KiwiSaver when they were still young, before they reached the age of 18. So when they got to their first job, they actually couldn't opt out of KiwiSaver. So if you've got young children, this might be something that you consider doing. Employers in New Zealand contribute a minimum of 3% of an employee's pay to KiwiSaver. They may contribute more. Do you think this is true or false? Again, this is true. So all employers must contribute a minimum of 3%, but a lot of contracts now, people are offering to put more into their employees' KiwiSaver because they feel that it's really important. Can you choose your own KiwiSaver provider? Again, this is true, but lots of New Zealanders don't do this, and they end up in what's called a default fund, which is just a list of approved suppliers by the government. And if you don't choose, you just get sent to the next one on the list once you IRD selected for you. So we do encourage you to make a selection of your own KiwiSaver. So to know whether you're going to have enough for retirement, you can always go to the Sorted site, sorted.org, and check out the KiwiSaver calculator. This is in the tools section of the Sorted site. So if you just log in, the tools at the top, and in the tools, in the drop-down box, there is a KiwiSaver calculator. In here, if you wanted to consider what am I just planning for retirement, or some of you still might be looking at buying your first home. But if you just want to plan for your retirement, all you do is hop in here and answer a few simple questions. So for example, today, I'm going to say that I'm aiming to retire at 65. I'm already 54. I'm employed and I earn about $50,000 a year. My KiwiSaver balance is, last time I checked, somewhere around about $28,000 already. And I've chosen to be not in a balanced fund, but I've chosen to be in actually a growth fund. So I'm contributing 3%. My employer is actually contributing 4%. And my results would look like this. So by the time I hit 65, I would have approximately 83,000 in my KiwiSaver fund. What I could do, of course, is I could change my contributions. So if I change my contributions to 4% of my income, and let's face it, this is taken out before I get to see it, so I don't really miss it. I can change the amount that I will have by nearly $7,000. So in here, the system will tell you if you're buying a home, but it'll also tell you essentially what this will do. And this says that if I've saved $90,000 at retirement, that's going to give me an extra $83 a week from the time I retire at 65 till the time I'm 90 to help subsidise my national super. So you might like to have a play around with this, and if you're working at how much more you want to have in retirement, you might want to have a play around with this to see how much more you would need to contribute to be able to subsidise your national super. Again, as far as we're aware, this is still going to be around in some form by the time we all get to retirement age, but it will be nice to be a little bit more comfortable. Sorry, I just need to get myself back into presentation mode for this one. And so a quick win in this situation is simply have a think about what you could contribute to KiwiSaver. It might be at the moment you've just had a pay rise, and that's a really good opportunity to say, well, I didn't have that money before, I wasn't using it to live on, so perhaps I can contribute a little bit more to my KiwiSaver. So at the moment, your contributions can be 3, 4, 6, 8, or 10%. But also it might be that your employer, some employers are actually matching or giving larger percentages towards the KiwiSaver. So if your employer does contribute and can contribute more, it's a great idea to take advantage of that. So statistics, what are they telling us at the moment? They're actually telling us that 61% of 18 to 64-year-olds are making contributions to a KiwiSaver fund. It's actually higher than what a lot of people would think. And this was, these figures actually come from this year in 2023. So it's a great, KiwiSaver is a great retirement investment tool. So you have flexibility to choose and change your provider. So there are a range of funds and types available in that range from a conservative fund through to the more risky funds, the growth funds, and the more aggressive ones. You can also make your matching your investments to your time frame and risk appetite. So it might be that you're quite conservative, and it's been shown in New Zealand, women particularly are a lot more conservative than what their male counterparts. What this does mean, of course, is it means that we can potentially miss out on some of the benefits of the types of funds. Also, when you're contributing to KiwiSaver, if you contribute the minimum of $1,043 a year, the government is going to throw in another, well, I should say throw in, but they're going to give you another $521 every year at the beginning of July added to your fund, and you will benefit from the compounding interest and returns from that money as well. If you're not sure what fund you're in or what fund type is best for you, there is also a section in the sorted site that is a KiwiSaver fund finder, and it's in our sorted 6-step section. So in sorted, if you go, sorry, it takes a moment to load up. So if you go into the 6 steps section at the top, there is the fund finder. So in here, if I'm not sure what type of fund is best for me, and lots of us are not, so if you go in here, it can give you some idea as to what sort of fund you should be considering. So as I said, the example I was using before, perhaps we'll use someone slightly younger who's 40, they're currently employed, currently earning $50,000 a year. I want to use my KiwiSaver money. Well, it could be I'm not going to use it till I retire. So it's going to be 10 years or more before I need to access this fund, because I'm not going to use it for a house. over a given year, I'm comfortable with losses or gains. And again, these vary. If you're very conservative, you might not be comfortable with this, but if this is a long-term investment, you're not going to look at it. Sometimes it could be a case of don't look. And what this will do is it will give you some ideas. So the most important thing for me is when investing in KiwiSaver, getting back at least as much money as I put in, almost certainly ending up with more money than I put in, despite some ups and downs along the way, or high returns over the long term, even if it means big ups and downs in some years. If you're not taking the money out in the short term, this might be an option that works for you. So in this example, giving somebody who's 40 and is prepared for a few ups and downs, what the system is saying, I'm recommending for you is a growth fund. So again, if you pop in what your current balance is and what your contributions are, say 4% for me, and there's information about fees. Now, all the returns shown on the sorted site actually are returns after fees. So don't be scared by fees, because higher fees don't necessarily mean higher returns, but cheaper fees don't necessarily mean good returns either. Some of the funds that we have got in here, and this has got a selection of every single fund available in New Zealand, it will give you the return after fees. So have a look. As I said, this gives you all of the different providers and the returns that they have given in for example, this one, super easy for the last average of 5.64% that is returned. If these are funds have been around less than 5 years, it'll actually tell you, and it won't give you an average return. But this is a really good way to have a look and find a fund. The system will tell you about, if you click on it, it will tell you about the fund, who's the manager, what it's invested in, and the returns, show you the returns that has been available. Plus, it will give you feedback from people that have used the fund to say, this is what we felt the service was like and how good it was or not. So we do encourage you, if you're not sure what should be invested in, have a look at this. So we're just getting ourselves back to our next slide. So our next slide is just a little summary of how KiwiSaver is invested. Now, this is regulated by the government. They have provided guidelines as to what percentage of a fund can be in different types of things like shares, or the more safer money investments like term deposits, bonds, and what have you. So this gives you an idea of the different funds, what sort of time frame you should be looking at being invested for, what sort of results you should expect, what it's likely to do with regards to returns. So, for example, if you take a balanced fund, your level of risk is somewhere in the middle. It's likely that the fund will go up and down a little bit, but continue on an upward trajectory. Potential returns are quite good. You'll get a return, and you should be in the fund from somewhere between 5 to 12 years to get the most benefit out of it. If you were, say, in your early 20s and you weren't looking to buy a house, you could put money in an aggressive fund. Now, again, because up to 99% of this fund can be in shares, you can see some wild fluctuations. But the share market is cyclical, so we do expect to see it go up and down over time. And again, because it's aggressive, you would expect to be in this fund for a little bit longer. Okay, so here's a little video about retirement spending.
The retirement expenditure guidelines give us real data and information about how much money people are spending in retirement. This can help us to plan our own retirement saving goals and give us a better picture of what we'll be spending money on. You can download and read the full report for all the details, or use the summary data to help you determine your retirement savings goal. The retirement planner on Sorted will do all the hard work for you. We'll take a look shortly.
Right, let's move on to how much is enough. It's really hard to know how much you're going to need in retirement, but here's some figures and these numbers come from Massey University, and these guidelines came out in 2022. So what they'd done was they'd actually surveyed retirees and what it was costing them to live in New Zealand. So, for example, a one person living by themselves, if they were in a main centre of Auckland, Wellington, or Christchurch, they would expect to need about $781 a week for a fairly basic, no frills type of retirement. If they wanted a few little luxuries along the way, that could increase up to $1,107. If they were two people in the same situation, that would change from 9 to 913 up to potentially $1,578 a week. So you can see that there is quite a bit of difference. But the other thing that you need to take account of here is that if you might start off in a two-person household, but if you're in a two-person household and you lose your partner, the amount that you would need to help fund the lifestyle that you're looking at here is potentially going to go up. And this quite often happens, especially to women in New Zealand. Because what's happening is that if they were a couple living a no-frills lifestyle, they would only need to have $190,000 plus the New Zealand super to fund that. But if they end up living by themselves and the single benefit is slightly higher, they would need more. They would need 277,000 approximately plus their super to maintain that lifestyle. So a lot of people unfortunately are being caught out because they do end up in a situation where they're going from a two-person household to a single-person household, and that's going to affect what they're actually going to have to spend. So a lot of us have no idea what it's going to cost for our retirement, but there is a handy little tool in the Sorted site on sorted.org.nz in the tools section called the Retirement Planner. Again, I would encourage you to have a play around with this. Sometimes it can be a little bit scary, but it actually might be just a handy little tool for you. So it's under Tools at the top section. And when you come in here, whoops, sorry, my computer's a little bit slow today. And so retirement, there's a couple of ways to get to it. Here's your retirement calculator here. So we start planning. I'm going to start planning early. I'm 35. I'm not going to retire till I'm 65. And I'm going to be planning ahead on my own. There are options here with a partner, but I'm going to plan on my own. Now, do I want to live in a main centre or do I want to live in regions? I think I want to live in a main centre. Lots of things going on, bit of excitement. Now, I want a few choices. So I'm going to say I want a few luxuries, not getting too flash. So my KiwiSaver balance at retirement. Now I've kind of worked out what my retirement balance is going to be, and I've been putting away some money. So I'm going to have approximately $170,000. I have a little bit of savings as well. I don't have any other investments. I'm going to downsize. I'm hoping to downsize and have a little bit of money left over. And this, of course, is pie in the sky because we never know how much this is going to be. I don't think there's any chance of me getting an inheritance. I don't have a business to sell, and I don't have anything else at this stage, or that I can rely on. So National Super is going to give me $496 a week. Now, I'm not sure that I'm going to have investment income. I might have a little bit, but maybe not much. So I'm going to say perhaps that I'm going to have $50 a week from investments, but maybe I'm going to have a little side hustle that I can do as a job, that's going to pay me another $120 a week. I don't have any rental income or other income. So what this is going to tell me is that actually all of those things added together, because I'm not going to completely give up work, I'm actually going to meet my goal. So sometimes when you start looking at the calculators, they're not it's not as hard to do or achieve as you think. But what you can do is you can always play around in here. And what this does is it uses the money, because a lot of clients or people, when they retire, they don't take all of their money out of the KiwiSaver on the first day. What they do is they actually spread it out and take it out incrementally over their retirement. So they might be thinking, on average in New Zealand, it's going to be quite conceivable that people retiring in the next 20 years are going to live till they're 90. And that means they're going to be retired for 25 years or even more, because the lifespan of New Zealand is increasing. So again, a handy little tool that may help you calculate your retirement and how you're progressing. So for you may want to have a consideration here as to how are you going against your plan at the moment. For many of you, KiwiSaver is going to be a great start and perhaps will be your main savings. However, you might want to consider some other things, or at different stages of life, you may be able to contribute more or save to different platforms. So perhaps paying off the house and downsizing later on to have a bit of a cash reserve may be the option that you're looking to do. Do be aware, though, that my mother has just done this, and she thought that selling her big 3-bedroom house and going to a 2-bedroom little unit was going to create a whole lot of spare cash. Unfortunately, she found out that the 2-bedroom unit that she wanted cost more than the value of her current house. So we may have to consider whether just investing in our house is going to be the option for us. So considering some other investments might be an option for you, and you might want to jot down what other things you would like to consider. So to bridge the gap, what other sort of things could you consider to bridge the gap? It could be that you consider looking for income streams outside the home. Some people take in boarders. You might be able to Airbnb part of the home or your spare room. You might have a little side hustle that you're going to do once you've finished working full time. For example, I've got friends who go to craft markets. They are stall holders at craft markets during the summer. So during the winter, they make stuff, and in the summer, they go to the craft markets and they use that money to subsidise their pension. I've got other friends who have a little side hustle doing catering. So what they do is a couple of events a year, they do the catering for it. I've got a friend who loves gardening, and what she's done is she's got a little arrangement with the business that she supplies them with fresh flowers every week. So there might be lots of things that you could think of that you could do, that maybe you've got an interest in, that you can do as a little bit of a side hustle after you finish working full time. Another one that used to be a great place, and I'm still sure is Greyskills used to set up people who'd retired with little part-time jobs, like ladies working in the office, where they had a small business that needed somebody who knew something about running a business and an office. So what they were doing is they would set them up with appropriate people, so the small businesses getting going could benefit from the knowledge of the older people, and the older people had to work a couple of hours a week for a little bit of pay. So other things you might like to consider, perhaps making a small increase to your KiwiSaver contributions. It could be focusing on paying off your mortgage faster, or investigating additional investment options. So maybe you've got some money set aside you don't want to lock up in KiwiSaver, but that you can put in other money-making situations. So I'm just going to go back into present mode for this one, because just so that it looks better for you. So it's good to remember, people say 60 is the new 50. They also say 70 is the new 60. But unfortunately, 80 is still 80. As in our video earlier on, all of a sudden you wake up and one day I'm 80 and I'm a little bit older. It does seem that the gap between 70 and 80, for a lot of us, that's when we will have increasing health issues and be increasingly less able to do the things that we could always do prior to that. So it is a good idea to think about what's going to happen when we go into this period of our life. For some of us in retirement, a lot of our spending is going to happen when we first retire, because we're going to be active and we're going to do a lot of things that we really enjoy and that we can do. A lot of people will take up golf, new sports, do a lot of traveling. But then what happens is that we get into our 70s and we tend to slow down a little bit. Our health is still good, but maybe we're just not as active as we used to be. And then when we hit 80, our costs go up again, as our health can sometimes become increasingly fragile. So when we're thinking about retirement, just think that your spending in retirement is not necessarily going to be even. So very important, and best way to get to retirement, think about what your vision of retirement for you is like. It's great to be able to live well in retirement, and we can plan for living well in the future by setting ourselves some savings and investments today. Remember to connect with your future self. Using the Face app might be a good way to actually do that. Think about, when you think about retirement, what your life will look like and what you will look like. Plan. Put a plan in place, whether it's looking at how to optimize your KiwiSaver investment, planning to be mortgage free by the time you retire, or looking at other ways to arrive at retirement well. And then getting old. Think about getting old and growing old. It's supposed to be a great time of life. Ask any grandparent who gets to spend lots of time with their grandchildren just how wonderful it is to be able to manage your own time and do some of those things that you've always wanted to do and love doing. So have a think about now what you will do. You might like to jot down some ideas of what you will do now that you've looked at the session, as to what you can review, perhaps a little bit of a plan as to cost out what you think you're going to spend in your retirement and go, am I going to have enough money for it? Perhaps have a think about what you might like to do. Is it have a look at your KiwiSaver contributions, or perhaps consider, and I had some participants in another workshop, they thought they were going to buy themselves a new house and they were going looking at a great big 4-bedroom house. But when they went through the exercise with their retirement, they realized that downsizing now into a smaller, more appropriate house was actually a much better idea for them, because they realized that the kids had all left home, so they didn't need the great big 4-bedroom house that they were going to buy. So what they did was they actually downsized from their 3-bedroom house down to their 2-bedroom house, and they did it in their late 40s. And what that allowed them to do was actually come away mortgage free with a bit of money in the bank in their late 40s. So from that point on, what they were doing was saving solely for retirement. So it might be something like that that you can now consider doing. So how did you do? Along with this program, there is a survey that we have sent to your organiser for your behalf. We would love to get some feedback from you on the workshop today and the tools that we've presented you with. If you would like to do that, that will be sent out to you, I believe, by email. I would like to thank you all for participating today and coming along to think about your retirement and KiwiSaver and what it's going to look like for you. And I do thank you and congratulate you for taking the time to think about your future, because a little bit of planning can make it a great future. Let's not get to retirement just on National Super. And I hope you all have a lovely day. Kia ora, thank you so much for coming, and hope to see you next week for our next session. Thank you.